satisfaction. Get right in here.
That's what it means to be an offsider.
It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Awesome to have you guys with us on a hump day edition of the show. We've got 8 ways to win a Super Bowl. We've got Clemson fans reaching a breaking point with Brad Brownell. We've got a blind date that you may or may not take. And what would you say if I told you I can tell whether your team really has a shot at the national championship when the season begins? That's right, my friends. Also on YouTube today is where we are. So everybody wants to know where, how, and whom is going to win the Super Bowl. Everybody wants to know that answer. Incidentally, Diesel and I have a confession for you coming up at 3:10 p.m. So about 8.5 minutes from right now, you can set your watches to it, my friends. We have a confession for you and a question. And I will give you brownie points if you're willing to be truthful with us, because Diesel and I are both guilty of something right now. But everybody wants to know who's going to win the Super Bowl, right? Who is going to win? And in at least some of these matchups, we are offered a rematch, right, of a regular season matchup that took place. So, guys, you know, I always like to give you something that you're not going to get anywhere else, that you can't get anywhere else. So I am going to hit you to start the show today with an 8-prong methodology that predicts successfully who is going to win the Super Bowl. Now, what I can promise you is, what I believe is, that the Super Bowl champion is going to be one of these 2 teams. All right. Now, I'm not exactly reinventing the wheel here. There are 3 teams that have appeared on this list, 3 in totality, but it is a system that has been tried and true and has withstood the test of time. Are you ready, my friends? Are you ready to do this little dance, this little gigolo? Okay. Number 1, 6 of the last 7 Super Bowl champions have had point differentials of plus 100 or more over the course of the regular season. The last 6 of the last 7 point differentials. How badly are you beating your opposition? The last 8 Super Bowl champions have all had a plus 6 or better turnover margin. Okay? Turnovers attained versus turnovers handed to the other team. The last 8. That eliminates, okay, and they've been eliminated, but I put all of the playoff teams through this mix, and this just shows you that I'm right. That eliminates Cleveland and Miami. All right? The last 7 Super Bowl champions have had at least 6 games that they won by double digits. At least 6. You know who that stat eliminated? Oh, yeah, the Philadelphia Eagles. They were not dominant over anybody this year. As a matter of fact, the Eagles had all of 2 games that they won by double digits or more. Next up on the docket, how many games do you win against the spread? If you win 9 games against the spread over the course of the season, that has been an 82% predictor. I feel like I'm Captain Nerd over here with all these numbers. You guys know I like to say stats are like bikinis. They show some things, but not all. Ew, I'm nerding it up here with these statistics, but the reality is that's a good one. You know, like, are you exceeding expectation? Because the spread is expectation. Have you won, in addition, 3 games in a row against the spread? Can you do that consecutively? Can you have this stretch where we're saying, hot diggity dog, where did this come from? Boy, if I bet on you, I am in like Flynn. Then I give you a MARC RYAN special, okay? This is my own statistic that I love. 29 of the last 31 Super Bowl champions, 29 of the last 31 have met one of these two criteria. They had the number one defense in the NFL. That was Cleveland this year. Or they had a top 10 statistical quarterback the year that they won it. The year that they won it. A top 10 statistical quarterback. So that would have meant Cleveland qualifies because not that Joe Flacco is top 10, but they had the number one overall defense. And then you have your Rams, your Ravens, your Bills, your Cowboys, your usual suspects, and yes, your Detroit Lions. Then you have the following: 6-3 or better through 9 games. The last 5 Super Bowl champions were all 6-3 or better through 9 games. Who does that eliminate? And why is that important? Well, winning the Super Bowl, unlike Major League Baseball, where you can stink for 3/4 of the season, get hot right at the end, win the whole thing. Washington Nationals a couple years ago were 11-19, won the World Series. Football doesn't lend itself to that. Football doesn't lend itself to, quote unquote, flipping a switch and being able to win the whole darn thing. So who on this list was not 6-3 or better through 9 games? Buffalo, the Los Angeles Rams, Green Bay, and Houston. Now, you might say, well, MARC RYAN, 3 of those teams are still alive. They are. They are still alive. But then we go to the final one, and we say that only once in NFL history has a team won the Super Bowl with a quarterback making over 13% of his team's salary cap. That would eliminate Detroit and Kansas City. Well, you're saying, Mark, not so fast, because it was just last year that Kansas City beat this stat. Patrick Mahomes, and I would say, yeah, but how many teams have a Patrick Mahomes? The one thing that makes me cautious about this stat is that quarterback salaries are flying past the rate of inflation to such a bloody degree that pretty soon everybody's going to have a quarterback making more than 13% of the salary cap. And one of them is going to win the Super Bowl. Okay? But if we want to be sticklers on this, that would knock out potentially Detroit and Kansas City. If you're Jared Goff, I cough at this because we just saw Kansas City win the thing, failing at this stat last year. So when you put all of these numbers together, when I give you these 8 different criteria, and when I say to you who is going to be the Super Bowl champion when all is said and done, we punch in the 2, carry the 2, drop the 1, multiply by 6. The teams are Baltimore, San Francisco, and Dallas. Now, what numbers and data can seldom account for? And this is why you cannot be married to numbers, man. Like, there's got to be a human element to it. Moneyball, in my opinion, ruined the game of baseball. Takes out feel. You can't account for the Dallas Cowboys' propensity to choke. Pressure does weird things to people, man. I can't explain it. I root for people, not against people. But Dak Prescott's rep, Mike McCarthy's rep, is now cemented.
And in no world should Dallas choking 4 years ago in the playoffs have any effect whatsoever on Dallas choking in the playoffs this year. But somehow it keeps happening.
Every year. And Diesel, I get the same thing, and we're going to talk about this hour, the breaking point that Clemson fans are at with Brad Brownell. I got Clemson fans saying they do this every year. What is this? What is this? And this is them collapsing once conference play begins, right? Clemson now 1-4 in ACC conference play. And here you guys thought that the ACC only stood for all cupcakes conference in football. No.
Yeah, and Clemson, last I saw, I don't know where they are now after this loss, but they were 26, 27 in the net rankings. Clemson should be a really good basketball team. Yet you get into league play, and it just falls off a cliff.
I don't know what it is. It doesn't.
What is up with that?
I don't know. Is there some Dallas Cowboys in Clemson basketball, Diesel? Oh boy. So anyway, you guys are saying on these numbers, you're saying, well, Mark, you did all that work, all that effort. I got one of our managers here coming in and laughing at all these chicken scratch pages of research that I have in front of me here that only I can read. And it gives me Baltimore and San Francisco. Well, thanks, Captain Obvious. But this is the data that shows you why Baltimore or San Francisco is going to win this thing. Okay? It's the data. It's the criteria. You put the teams up to it. You see who's still alive at the end. It was Baltimore. It was San Francisco. It was Dallas. But the data can't account for the team needing the Heimlich maneuver because there is that degree of choking going on in Big D. All right, Diesel, you and I, and there's something, Diesel, that you told me off the air before we got started today. All right, and we're going to pose a question to you guys via the text line at 71307. You can get to us there. You can also chime in on the renewal by Anderson of the Carolinas fan phone at 844-326-3663. Diesel and I are both guilty of something. And I realized it, Diesel, right before I left the house. So let me tell you how lame I am and what I did. So anyway, Diesel and I, we looked at each other, okay? And we have the same clothing item on that we have yesterday. Now, this dawned upon me right before I left home today. And so what did I do, Diesel? Do you see what I did? I opened my black thing and I put on a shirt of a motorcycle shop that my cousin works at to give the illusion, Diesel, that I did not have on the exact same thing that I was wearing here yesterday. You offered me no such courtesy. You have on the exact same hoodie that you had on yesterday. Okay?
Yeah, that's because you didn't tell me that you were coming into the show in the studio today. You told me yesterday that you weren't going to be here. So I didn't anticipate needing to wear a different hoodie today. And then all of a sudden, poof, Mark Ryan's here. And it's like, oh, well, crap.
So Diesel's wearing the same thing he did yesterday. And I have the same overthrow that I had yesterday, but I had the idea. I'm like,
Thank you, Brandon. He says you can wear hoodies more than once in a row. Thank you, Brandon.
Consecutively. Can you wear it? Can you wear it consecutively? So, my friends, I put it to you guys. All right. How many times can you wear something without washing it? Okay. How many times can you wear something without washing it? And do you ever wear the same thing multiple days in a row? Now, if I'm at home, I got no problem doing this. But it's amazing, and it's perhaps a sign that we've grown way too comfortable in front of each other, Diesel, that we do this coming to work. You and I do this coming to work. So, yes, you see on the stream that I have the exact same thing that I was wearing yesterday. I have it on, but I threw on a T-shirt underneath, okay? I had on jeans yesterday. I have on shorts today. It is in the 30s degrees. I'm getting dumber by the day here. Dumber by the day. Diesel is looking stellar in his Appalachian State Mountaineers for the second day in a row. There's got to be people, Diesel, that think they're in the movie Groundhog Day watching us on the YouTube stream.
Yeah, I don't know how many more wears I'm going to get out of this because the dog is starting to put holes in it. This is a hoodie. This is, to tell you how old this is, Mark, this is a JanSport brand hoodie. Remember JanSport backpacks from like the 90s? I don't remember when I got this thing, but I'm going to tell you, it didn't start this color of light gray. It was a much darker color of gray. It's old. It fits like a glove. I love this thing, but the dog is starting to punch holes in it because he just gets bitey and just latches onto things. So, yeah.
Texter says, Mark, you owe me an apology. I texted in last week and told you the Packers would win. You made me look like a fool. Who's the fool now? I feel like the dude in Office Space, Diesel, that I make one mistake and I got to hear from 8 different people about the lack of a cover page on my TPS reports.
Like me yesterday when I told you that
yeah,
I picked the Packers and you call me dumb for picking the Packers.
I heard that over and over and over again. Now I got it from this kind gentleman. Sir, yes, I owe you an apology. I actually thought the Dallas Cowboys were above the most low-life, choking buffoons on a grand stage. A 7 seed had never beaten a 2 in the new format. I apologize. Listen, call me out when I'm wrong. The only thing I'm saying is, why is it that when we are wrong, that goes viral? When we are right, it's crickets. Help us change that, will you? Please help us change that. But to you, sir, I owe you an apology. I will gladly, wink, wink, send you a pair of toenail clippers in the mail. Okay? Texter says, Mark, where do you get your stats? Genuinely curious. Love this type of analysis. I come up with some of them on my own, Texter. Then I do research on other ones. Then I say, well, can you get hot and win in football? And the answer is usually no. The Giants are a notable exception to that. Remember, 9-7 New York beat the undefeated Patriots. There are very, very few absolutes. But when you have enough that are like 70, 80, 90% accurate, you put them together, it gives you an accurate picture of who can actually win the thing, right? Win the thing. Let's see here. But thank you for the compliment, sir. Texter says, Mark, wearing something multiple days in a row or whether or not you wash it depends on what it is you're going to, what underwear you're going to wear more than once. See, underwear is the one thing you can't do more than once.
What's that saying, Mark? Your importance on the football field is in direct relation to how close you are to the football. I think how often you need to wash something is in direct relation as to how close it is
to the football,
to your junk and your butthole.
To the footballs. Yes,
yeah.
To the footballs. You can't do that. You absolutely can't do that. All right. Let's see here. I wear the same hoodie and jacket all over my layers in this cul-de-sac warehouse every day. I give zero cares about what I wear. He wears the same thing every single day.
Texter, that's evident. You ever look at photos from like the 1920s, 1910s? Everybody is dressed to the nines every single day. Like every guy is wearing a suit and a tie and a hat and an overcoat and gloves. Everybody looked fantastic. And then we all just gave up. You know, we go to a local Walmart. People look like garbage walking in and out of a Walmart. You know, Crocs, pajama pants, butt crack showing. Like, what happened? When did we lose respect for ourselves in this country?
When did that happen? Take some pride. Take some pride. Change your clothes from one day to another.
No, just wear something a little bit nicer. Don't look like such a boogie, as Judge Smales' wife said in what was that? Caddyshack. It's like, yeah, you two look nice. Well, you two look like a couple of boogies.
All right, up next on the show, one NFL head coach. All right. Had the right to end the career of a reporter and so nicely refused to do it. We'll share that with you next here on the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate. defense, how can we be expected to have this very lengthy, this very robust winter wardrobe, okay, when we live in the South? I don't know why I felt like I needed to hide the fact from you that I had on the exact same top that I had on yesterday. Yet here we are. Found a T-shirt. My cousin would be happy. This is the motorcycle shop. Those of you on the YouTube channel are saying this, that she works out in California. And this is the motorcycle stop that the actor Ewan McGregor routinely stops by. How about that? So an NFL head coach had the chance to write the eulogy for a reporter this week. Now, before we share with you the clip, this ties so much into something that Diesel and I have discussed, fought over. It's a shock we still work together after how passionately we went at each other's throats after this, about this. And, here's what it is, okay? It is the whole discussion about whether cold weather games, cold weather teams should have a retractable roof. Now, every time I say dome, Diesel corrects me. No. I didn't say dome. I said the ability to close your roof. And in fairness, I don't have an issue with having the ability to close your roof. I have an issue with artificial turf. And I love watching games in the elements. And like an absolute sucker, like many of you, I shelled out $5.99 plus tax to get Poppycock. To watch Kansas City and Miami. Why? Because it was -30 below wind chill, and I had to see that. Well, unfortunately, Diesel, there was a reporter in Tampa Bay that thought Todd Bowles and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were walking into a Kansas City-esque environment. Folks, I kid you not, on the all-time awkwardness scale, okay, what is this for you? I'm about to share something with you that causes me so much discomfort. Diesel, it's 42 seconds. How do I know that? Because each second felt like an hour. Listening to this thing, it is so painful to me. That's not to say that we've never made mistakes, but the awkwardness behind this is so painful to me. Where is this scale of 1 to 10 on your awkward meter?
Coach, looking forward towards Detroit. The weather has been a factor in some of the playoff games, even for the most prepared teams. Today, it's 13 in Detroit, which doesn't compare to some of the temperatures we talk to. Any special plans to acclimate the team to not only endure, but perform in those kind of frigid temperatures should you face them in Detroit?
You do know we play indoors, right? They got a dome. No, nothing planned. We're indoors, and we only have to be outside for 20 seconds getting off the bus going under the thing, so we'll be okay.
Time of death, Diesel. Time of death. 3:27 p.m. and 21 seconds. Diesel, you laughed at that.
Oh, that's rough.
I was cringing at that. And I don't know, to me, to make that mistake.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not going to fire that person. I'm not. But to make that mistake, that shows, unfortunately, a tremendous lack of knowledge.
Yeah, I've been put in a position like that one time in my career interviewing a musician, and I thought it was a very valid question, and I didn't mean it with any disrespect, but the way that it was answered made me feel about this big. Okay? I was interviewing Dave Mustaine, the frontman of Megadeth, who had spent time in Metallica before that. And when I was interviewing him, they were touring on the 40th anniversary of an album that came out in 1987. It was a highly technical album. And I asked the question, there are songs on this album, on this tour, that you haven't played live in 40 years, if ever, if you've ever played these songs live. How much of a challenge was it Or was it difficult? Did you find any difficulty going back and relearning any of these songs and relearning what you were doing? And he looks at me, he goes, really? That's your question?
Oh,
He said,
what a
no.
jerk.
He said, no.
What a jerk.
It wasn't hard to relearn the songs. I wrote them. I know how they go. And I was like, what an ass. Because to me, I was trying to say these were highly technical albums that you maybe haven't played some of these songs live in decades. Was it a challenge? And then I swear to you, the very next day, I'm listening to satellite radio and the bass player is being interviewed. And he said, you know, guys, it was tough to go back and relearn some of these songs that we haven't played live in a long time. I was like, Dave, you jackass.
Oh, Diesel. I've got two. By the way, guys, any moment in your life that awkward where it's just like, let's give her the benefit of the doubt. We've all had bad moments. That was a really, really bad moment. But Diesel, I've got two for you. Okay.
Should always have somebody proofread your questions before you ask them.
Yes, we don't do that on this show, but maybe we should. So Diesel, I was part of the opening of the launch of the Odyssey Atlanta sports station. This was circa the end of 2012. And Diesel, I kid you not, my second or third show there. And this was still when the program director was so intent on everything going right that he was in the studio during the shows. Ugh. He was like coming into the studio. And I get it. I don't fault him for that. Diesel, I had a stomach virus.
Micromanagement.
I had a, well, you said that. I like the guy. So anyway, I had a stomach virus, Diesel, the second or third show there. And, you know, like your stomach is starting to make sounds that's audible on the microphone. You're like, you can't hide the fact that your microphone is picking up that sound. You can't hide the fact that every single commercial break, you're making a beeline to the restroom. All right. The level of awkward that I had on that day. And then you're hoping, Diesel, you're hoping that you're 100% clean. You know what I mean? And you don't know that you are. Okay. 100% clean. And there's all these sounds and you're like trying and fighting. Have you ever had it so bad and you're like fighting that you like got like the beads of sweat that are starting to come off your face? That was me, second or third show. Here's the other one, Diesel. Okay. And I learned a very valuable lesson here. And I welcome your incredibly awkward moments if you'd like to share them with us. Diesel, I had just gotten out of a relationship, but I was already dating somebody else. This was, maybe 10, 11 years ago. Okay. I got out of a relationship, wasn't working for a long time. And, you know, I didn't do the whole let yourself heal. I just jumped right into something else. So like my circle of friends wanted to meet the new girl. So like one of the guys has us over to his house and we're watching a game together. And Diesel, in front of the whole group, I called her the ex-girlfriend's name. I said, hey, would you like me to get you something? I called her the ex's name. Now, the problem with this is everyone just met the new girl. Everyone in the room knows the ex's name. The new girl doesn't know the ex's name. So if you ever, who was it? Was it Southwest Airlines that had the want to get away moment, that they had that want to get away campaign? Like that for me, there was no getting around that. You couldn't hide that. You couldn't pretend it didn't happen. You know, there was no slinking away. You had nowhere to hide, brother. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. There's no way out.
That's rough.
So those were the two that I suffered with. All right. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys are not too interested in sharing your most embarrassing, awkward moments. But Diesel, you are that lady's boss. What happens? What happens? Do you like? Ooh. You got to say, look, we've got to be better than that.
Yeah, that's when you've got to pull her aside and say, from now on, every time we assign you an interview, I need to proofread your questions first to make sure that you're not going to be putting yourself in this situation again.
Oh man, just absolutely.
Like, is this a new sports reporter? Is this somebody who's new to this, or is this a veteran?
I hosted in Tampa, so I know a lot of the people down there. I don't recognize that voice, Diesel. So I don't know who that is. But that was, oh gosh, like she will remember that moment for the rest of her life, and it won't be a good memory. It will not be a good memory. Okay, guys. So one of the games coming up this weekend, and like if you've listened to the show this week already, you know that I am really, really on Detroit. You could say, Mark, outside of bashing Dallas, Detroit has probably been the team that you're talking about the most. And that's because I firmly believe that Detroit has a very, very strong claim to grab all of us as America's team in this postseason. And don't say you don't want it. That's Dallas. Dallas hasn't earned that. Dallas claimed that. And because they claim that, we just decide we're going to give it to them. You can't just say, okay, now we're called X. We're no longer called Twitter. It's still twitter.com. Okay, like people have learned behaviors over a period of time. I can't believe that all of us bought hook, line, and sinker this America's team BS from the Dallas Cowboys when we, as the greatest country on earth, would never sign up for that mediocrity. They have not made a conference championship game since 1998, okay? Well, you're saying, Mark, have you seen Detroit's history? No playoff wins in 32 years. But, my friends, look at where we are right now. Do you not have an underdog story? I have an underdog story. The end of my freshman year of high school, I was 5'3" and 103 pounds. The end of my senior year of high school, no one even believed I was in high school. I looked that young. Okay? My freshman year at the University of Florida, to say I had no shot with any girl was an understatement. People looked at me like I was one of those savant kids, like super smart kids that got in when he was 15 years old. And I'm like, no, really, I'm not that smart. Like I'm legitimately my age. I got bullied. I got pushed down the stairs. I got what's called book drop when they knock all the papers out of your hands. That was me. And even still today, Diesel, like you can tell everybody, Diesel, I'm not a small man, but we got 4 full-time employees here. You can tell everybody I'm the smallest by a country mile of the 4 people here.
You were getting your books knocked out of your hands in college?
No. High school.
I was about to say.
High school.
High
school.
Good God, Florida's brutal.
But Detroit is that story. Like the city has been disrespected completely. The quarterback, this whole narrative, Matthew Stafford is returning to Detroit. Bump that, man. How about Jared Goff has a chance at his Shawshank Redemption moment? Right? How about that? How about Dan Campbell when he was hired? Oh, listen to this meathead. Yeah, the meathead's pretty smart. That meathead happens to tie in very, very well culturally to a blue-collar city. And there is such synergy there. The parallels there between team and city are too much to count. And I know we're the big, bad United States of America, right? I get it. More money, stronger military, higher quality of life than anybody else. But do we not have room in our hearts for a little underdog story as well? Can you not find it within you? By the way, Detroit played Tampa earlier in the season. All right, earlier in the season. So I thought, okay, like how much does that forecast? Detroit went to Tampa, won 20-6. All right, that was one of 7 of Detroit's Super Bowl, one of 7 double-digit Detroit Lion wins. And Diesel, in my Super Bowl criteria, Detroit met 6 of those 8 qualities. They're close. They're not quite there. But if you asked everybody, how do you feel about Detroit in terms of winning the Super Bowl, you might say close, not quite there.
With respect to our conversation earlier in the show about the way Americans have chosen to let their quality of everyday dress fall so much, Madcraft said, we didn't give up. It's just we started to listen a little too much to the hippies in 1965. Brandon here says, could you imagine going to a Braves game in dress slacks and a jacket in July or August? That sounds brutal.
No.
Like I've thought that too. But at the same time, like, realize they use different materials. It wasn't like all wool suits. A wool suit in July in Atlanta sounds god awful.
Well, who would do that?
But they didn't wear wool suits
Right.
all the time. They had like seersucker suits that were thinner and more breathable. But like we used to want to look good. Now people like want to look bad. I don't get it.
Diesel, you're totally right. I was like, when I was a kid, I was at a playoff baseball game. And I saw that game years later on ESPN Classic. And what struck me is, why are all these idiots in suits?
Yeah.
What?
Everyone.
Why are they in suits? The first thing you would do nowadays is you'd have your sweatshirt or you'd have your cap in your car and you'd strip out of that bad boy, right? You'd strip out of it immediately. I don't know why we don't do that anymore, but these are also the uniforms. I mean, imagine having to wear, being a player and having to wear pants in Atlanta in July.
Yeah.
Or imagine having to play in the old Comiskey in Chicago in October or March, and all you got are those little pants.
Yeah. There was an episode of Seinfeld where George decided he was going to change the uniforms because they had been wearing the wool blend uniforms for years for the New York Yankees. And he said, let's change this. And so he switched everyone over to like a polyester blend uniform. And when it was sunny and beautiful outside, everybody loved it. And then it rained and everything shrunk and all the players were wearing like skin tight uniforms, all because George made the switch.
There you go. So check this out. I looked at rematches, right? Because Detroit has Tampa Bay in the rematch. Rematches from the regular season. What happens when they meet in the postseason? Would you believe this? Okay, would you believe this? 86 times teams have played in the regular season and then in the postseason since 2002. It's happened 86 times. Only 45 of those times has the same team won both matchups. That's 52%. Now, I do believe that Detroit should beat Tampa Bay by double digits. You could make an argument that both of these teams are playing with house money, and I hate that phrase, Diesel, because tomorrow's not promised to any of us. We all should be listed as day-to-day on the injury report, and there's no guarantee you're going to get back to this point with what can happen. You should always have carpe diem as your mantra. But if I'm Tampa Bay, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, okay, only 45 out of 86 times did the same team win both, meaning that you would think, okay, the first team wins the first game. They're the better team. They're 75, 80% of the time they win. No. What do you attribute that to? Isn't that crazy? I mean, is that just the parody of the NFL in a microcosm, in a capsule? That's nuts.
It is. Mongo chimes in with his Southwest want to get away moment. He says, you want awkward. The first date with my current wife, my ex-wife, was at the same restaurant. She walked over to the table and introduced herself.
No, don't do that.
Oh.
Don't do that, ex-wife. The new wife, Mongo, has no interest in that.
Well, Mongo, here's the question, Mongo. Did you take your then first date girlfriend to a restaurant that you used to regularly take your ex-wife to? If that's the case, that is a rookie mistake, Mongo. That is a rookie mistake. Now, if it's like a restaurant y'all never went to, and it's just like a 1 in a million chance you happen to be in the same restaurant at the same time, it's not your fault. But if you took your first date girlfriend to the same restaurant you used to take your ex-wife to, that's on you, bro.
Diesel, everybody's got a money restaurant, you know?
Yeah.
So he's playing the odds. What are the odds that she would be there? She was, Mongo. You should have known better, sir. All right, up next. In my opinion, Clemson fans have reached a breaking point with this. That is coming your way next. I'm Mark Ryan. He's Diesel. And it's Offsides, the Fan Upstate.
Sides with Mark Ryan.
Only on the
So Clemson loses last night. It is their 4th loss in 5 games in ACC play. They're still comfortably in the NCAA tournament, an event that Brad Brownell has made just 3 times in 13 years. But I got the sense last night that Clemson fans were done. Even those fans that you know personally that always find the silver lining, and there's a skill to that, right? Like sometimes I am Jim Carrey and Liar, Liar. I cannot tell a lie. I don't know how you guys do it, but some of you can find the silver lining in everything. For many Clemson fans, they've just seen this story too many times. You know, the season starts out hopeful, that we get to conference play. Suddenly the team starts choking. The coach starts choking. You know, I've always said that I believe a team's play is a reflection of the personality of its head coach. Why does Dallas choke? Have you seen Mike McCarthy before big games? Kansas, many times. Look at Bill Self. How high do you think his blood pressure is in some of these games? You know, like it's one thing to say you're loose. It's another thing to be loose. Clemson plays super tight. Georgia Tech gets him last night, 93-90. And a lot of Clemson fans are bringing up a conversation that I had with you that went crazy viral in April of last year. I was at the Clemson spring game for football. The athletic director, Graham Neff, they obviously listen to the show. We really appreciate that. Came up to me and wanted to discuss some of our talking points about the basketball program and Brad Brownell. Because I said, look, I don't get the sense, right, that basketball is a huge priority when you consider that Brownell has been allowed to stay on as long as he has. And Graham Neff came up to me and he said, Mark, we hear you. I appreciate you being here. And we hear your audience regarding Brad. He said his first name. And remember, Clemson lost in the first round of the NIT, which I've always said stands for not in tournament. They lost to Morehead State. It's a family show. Eyes up here. Eyes up here. He said the loss popped the balloon of our positive energy. And he said if we aren't in the tourney next season, there will be a change. And I said, well, I said, Graham, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. This is unique. This is not something I expected. Can I share this with my audience? He said, of course. What I'm sharing with you is not anything that Brad Brownell doesn't already know. And so I'm having quite a few people after that game last night bringing that up to me, right? Bringing that up. This team is playing no defense. You know, college basketball teams, they allow 7.6 3-pointers per game. Over the last 3 games, Clemson has allowed 13 3-pointers made per game. You cannot give up 13 3-pointers a game.
Can't give up 39 points just off threes.
No, you can't. You can't do that, right? So, you know, like some of you, of course, those silver lining people said, there's no way Graham Neff said that to you, Mark. He did. I know it makes you unhappy. He did. Is it time that Clemson moves on from Brad Brownell? Is this it? You're going to give him till the end of the season, right? You want to see, but to me, what he's doing right now and how he's playing with this NCAA tournament berth and threatening it with every inexcusable loss, he's increasing what will be required for him to keep his job. He's making it harder on himself. Now I think it's Sweet 16 or Brad Brownell goes by the wayside. By the way, Diesel, did you hear about this little conundrum? Colonial Life Arena, Columbia, doing something really well, actually. When they don't have all their seats sold, they put up an announcement that the students can come down to the lower bowl. And what does it create? It creates a kick-butt national TV atmosphere.
Wait, why do they put students in the upper bowl?
Well, because students are poor, and though the more expensive seats are down low.
But every single team in the country puts their student sections behind the baskets.
Right.
And South Carolina is like, nah, we'll stick them way up there.
Well, no, I don't think they stick them way up there, Diesel, but they're not. What they say is they showed it on the Jumbotron.
Yeah.
You can fill in empty seats right by courtside. You can come in, you can fill in empty seats. So I would say to you, Diesel, think of the rock and the hard place that NFL teams are in, college teams are in, basketball teams are in for this reason. Who can afford the high ticket seats? It's not the people that are going to create the raucous environment, right?
Sure.
It's a bunch of gray tops. Gray tops are creating, can afford the high dollar seats. Those that are creating the atmosphere that you want can't afford that. Students, right? Can't afford that level of price. Can't afford that at all. So what do you do? What do you do? I mean, do you sacrifice short-term income to create a raucous atmosphere? I would.
No, I think it's brilliant. I mean, how many times have you watched games on television that look like they should be big games? You know, there's a couple of ranked teams maybe in the teens or in the 20s, and you got all kinds of empty seats. And you're thinking like the place sounds loud on television. Where are all the people? Well, they're way up there.
So, yeah, but what you're saying is all the people that paid top dollar are not happy because now you got people who didn't pay top dollar sitting all around them. What do you say to them? What did they pay top dollar for? How does that make any sense?
That's when you create another section of luxury seating for those people, but you get it off of the television broadcast. And that's never made sense to me. Why some stadiums will point the camera at the small side of the stadium, why they'll point the camera at the high dollar seats where the gray tops just sit there on their hands the whole game. Don't show them on television. Show the people who are losing their minds on television.
Yeah,
that's what makes for a good broadcast.
I've always said this, Diesel. If I tune into a sport I've never seen before and the crowd is nuts and the atmosphere is great, it convinces me that this is a big deal. You know, you tune into a college football bowl game, nobody's there. I'm not watching. Not watching. It's how it rolls. Great job, South Carolina. All right, up next, what the 4-team college football playoff era taught us. I'm Marquise Diesel, and this is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. Offsides, the Fan Upstate. What's good, my friends? This is the most interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides, Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on until 5:30 p.m. today. Not what you expected to hear, huh? Not what we expected to hear. But it's cool because we've got, proud to be bringing to you Furman basketball, winners of 2 straight in SoCon conference play. Funny what happens when the team starts to get just a little bit healthy. String together some dubs. They're at VMI tonight. Tip of the game is at 6 p.m. So the pregame show is on at 5:30. So Offsides today lasts until 5:30 p.m. Glad to have you with us between now and then. Thank you guys so much for all the kind words on the show in the first hour of the show. So, guys, I wanted to take a look at something here and share this with you because I think it's pretty doggone cool. If I'm honest with you, I wanted to take a look at where you had to be in the preseason polls. Okay, in the preseason polls, where did you have to be to win the national championship? Where did you have to be to play in the national championship? And I know what you're saying, Mark. You always say the preseason polls are irrelevant. Well, it's not that the people voting in the polls are always wrong. It's just all for hype. And in order to be accurate and in order for the teams that, that don't start in the top 25, in order for them to be on level footing, you can't have a poll until October. Otherwise, what happens is the teams that start in the top 10 always remain 1 loss ahead of everybody else. Now, I can prove this. You got one team that started number 8, one team that started unranked. Okay. The unranked team beats the number 8 team. They're now 3-0. The number 8 team is 2-1. What will happen is the unranked team will be like number 11 and the number 8 team will be number 12. And it's like they remain one loss ahead of them the entire season. Sucks. And it's not fair. I'm telling you, like it's really, really, really not fair. No matter what way you slice it, it is not fair. So, my friends, I thought I would share this with you. I went back and I looked at all of the national championship winners in the college football playoff era. Michigan and Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Clemson and Alabama and Clemson and Alabama and Ohio State. I went back and I looked at each and every one of these teams, okay, that made it. And I said, where were they in the preseason poll at the start of the year? Where were they? Where did they come out? And here is what I found. Okay, here is what I found. They came out, all right, third. Wow. That doesn't offer a lot of hope, does it? I mean, it's like, wow. So they kind of do know what they're talking about, the preseason poll voters. You know, like the average ranking of teams who win the national championship in the preseason poll, their average ranking was number 3. Now, I will tell you this. I will tell you that only one time in the college football playoff era did the national champion actually go wire to wire and win the whole thing. It was Alabama, but only one time did the number 1 team go wire to wire. But you got to be in that mix. You got to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the preseason poll to win the national championship. In order of making it to the national championship game, there were 2 instances in which teams that made it were not in the top 25 when the year began. One of these I couldn't believe, okay? TCU was unranked, and Diesel, would you believe that the 2017 Georgia Bulldogs that lost to Alabama in overtime, Tua Tagovailoa in OT to Devontae Smith for the win, that Georgia team was not ranked to start the year. Not ranked. So what do? How do you determine that? Well, I looked at all the teams and the others receiving votes, and I put TCU didn't have a single vote the year they made it to the national championship game last year. Didn't have a single preseason vote. And I said, okay, 47 teams received votes. I'm going to have TCU as the 48th ranked team. Then I said, okay, Georgia. Georgia isn't ranked to start this year, but Georgia is in the others receiving votes. So I could say, okay, Georgia's 33rd. And then I could do all of the permutations and calculations, and I could say, okay, to make the national championship game, where do you need to be? The average was top 10. Unfortunately, if you remove TCU from the mix, it becomes like top 6. So like TCU is an anomaly. You factor them into the equation, right? TCU makes it so that the average is 9.6. But if you take TCU out roughly to play in the national championship game, the average ranking of teams playing in the national championship game, preseason poll, number 6. To win the national championship, top 3 in the preseason poll. Worst case scenario for you, top 5 in the preseason poll. Now, because we always want to spin things locally, here's what I'll share with you. Would you believe that Clemson's preseason ranking has gotten worse 4 years in a row? So in other words, what they were ranked to start the year in 2019, 2020, right? 4 years in a row, Clemson's preseason ranking has gotten worse. Guys, listen, do not be denial is just a river in Egypt guy. Don't be that guy. Please. You have to see there is a downturn. Okay? You can tell me that Dabo is your guy. I respect that Dabo is your guy. I would also tell you that coaches who have raised the bar have been fired for failure to maintain the bar that they set. But they raised the bar. Dabo's why we're here. Yes, but when you raise the bar to that level, you have a responsibility to maintain what you've built. You can't just assume you're going to go right back to mediocrity when Dabo leaves. That's a loser's mentality. And again, Diesel, it brings me right back to the point that we always say, the similarities between Clemson and South Carolina fans. I'm seeing some Gamecock fan behavior in Clemson fans when we asked that question yesterday. How long should Dabo get if Clemson doesn't turn it back around? The fact that 60% of people said, as long as he wants, this is his baby, tells you that they still don't hold themselves to the bar that Dabo set for them.
Yeah, you think you're doing the right thing by being loyal, when what you're actually doing is holding your program back by refusing to hold Dabo accountable.
You are. So what are you going to do about it? The answer is have high standards, okay? Maybe in the current era, it's not possible. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But maybe NIL doesn't benefit Clemson, small town, off the beaten path, right? Maybe the transfer portal is never going to fully benefit a school like Clemson. So maybe instead of being a contender every year, maybe it's only realistic in this era to be a contender every 3 to 4 years. But guess what? This next year is year 4. You haven't been. Okay? You haven't been. You're not contenders. You didn't make the playoff in 2021. You didn't make the playoff in 2022. You didn't make the playoff in 2023. And then there's this mic drop moment. Clemson's preseason ranking this year, Diesel, okay? Coming into 2023, it was number 11. When Dabo's run started, it was number 12. I will bet you a pretty penny that Clemson's preseason ranking this year is going to be lower than it was when Clemson's run began. And so now we have reverted all the way back. You guys don't want Dabo to go because, look at what it was before he got here. And I'm telling you, sorry to hit you with the bearer of bad tidings. As the bearer of bad tidings, you're back there. You are now about to enter the year, okay, with a preseason ranking that is lower than when Dabo's reign began in 2012, okay? When Clemson really took off, 2012, I'm telling you, the preseason ranking this year is going to be lower than that.
Tim Lipsey on the YouTube chat says, unless Dabo changes his philosophy, they will continue to regress. About that, you are right. Also, welcome, Tim Lipsey. I think this is the first time we've ever seen you comment. Hey, if you are watching the YouTube stream and you've never commented on the show, you're a lurker. That's okay. We would like you, though, to at least pop up and say, hey, I'm watching the show. Tell us who you are and tell us where you're watching from. That would be great. We would love to know where we're reaching right now.
Absolutely love to hear from you guys always. And it's been awesome to be able to see the growth of the YouTube channel. Let us get to JD in Simpsonville, who wants to chime in on the college football playoff rankings, etc. JD, what's good, man?
Hey, Mark, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I think I called in just a few weeks ago, and I talked about the college football playoff when it expands to 12 teams being, a mulligan fest. And the preseason rankings that you were just mentioning, kind of plays into that whole thing, because all these teams that are going to be top ranked, they're already going to play in the preseason, and then they're going to be able to stay in those top, 12 to 15 spots. And So we're just going to see a lot of rematches. And what you asked, what we learned from the CFP going to 4 teams. What I learned is that when you start expanding things, that no one's going to be happy about it. Things are just going to continue to keep expanding further and further, and to include more teams. And so it'll just be a little more watered down. And I don't know. I'm torn on it. It'll be interesting to see. But I had another thing I wanted to talk to you about, Mark, too. The Dallas Cowboys. I owe them 2 thank yous, if I could, real quick. Is that okay with you, sir?
Absolutely. Go right for it.
Okay. So the Dallas Cowboys, first of all, I want to give them a big thank you for if they weren't so big here in South Carolina, when you posted that stat about the Panthers being the most hated team in North Carolina, if the Cowboys weren't so big here in South Carolina, the most hated team wouldn't have been the Eagles. So I owe them a thank you for that. And then I owe them one more thank you for Tripp's go-kart, man. I couldn't get the thing to crank forever. I checked and made sure there was gas in it. I couldn't get it to crank. And, turns out, hey, there's this little choke switch on there. Man, I tell you what, I put a Dallas Cowboys sticker on that thing and turned the choke on, and that sucker crunk right up. I'll be dog if the Dallas Cowboys didn't fix Tripp's go-kart.
I don't know what it is. I don't know why they do that every year. JD, thanks for the call.
JD, that might be the best piece of trash talking you've ever given us on this show.
It was. It was. That was drop-worthy, Diesel. It was.
Well, it would have been if you hadn't been talking over it. Yeah. Yeah, he was delivering this great diss to the Dallas Cowboys, and then you talked over him.
JD, I didn't mean to do that. JD, do me a favor. Call in before the weekend with the exact same line, okay? I will not talk over it the next time, and then we will have it. Diesel, this has been a moment. These are conversations that I've had with so many hosts. I'm like, when you feel like the guest is giving a good piece of audio, don't laugh. Don't laugh into the mic. Don't do that. And I did it. Guilty as charged. JD, call us back before the weekend. Give us that same line. We'll put it on the drop bar.
My favorite radio drop is from App State blocking the kick at Michigan. And the play-by-play host is yelling out, "It's Gonzo. It's Gonzo in the big house." And his color commentary guy is just going, "Wow! Wow!" over the top of it. I was like, shut up, dude. It's Gonzo in the big house is a great radio drop, and you're just yelling over it. What are you doing?
Yeah, you're ruining it. You're ruining it. I ruined it, JD. I ruined it. Don't let me ruin it. Don't let me ruin it the second time. Texter says, wake up, Clemson fans. When fans at Alabama don't want Dabo, it's time to take a look at what's really going on and apologize to Tyler from Spartanburg.
Ooh.
Any Clemson fans out there ready to apologize to Tyler from Spartanburg? Can you guys get pictures over text? A texter wants to know. Can we, Diesel?
No, we cannot.
We cannot. Mr. Mark, you owe me an apology. Texter, I already apologized for that. You send a text and then you go away? I already apologized for that. Texter says, went to my first game at Colonial Life Arena as a fan of the visiting team a few weeks ago, and props, it was a great atmosphere. Look at you guys doing very, very well.
I've never understood giving the Blue Hairs, the old fogies, the best seats in the house for basketball. Like, you want that loud, raucous atmosphere. They don't want to have loud, raucous teenagers around them. So sell them a VIP second. They'll pay for it.
Yeah.
They will pay extra money to get away from wild college kids. But you and I both know that on television and on the court, the loud, wild college kids play so much better than old people sitting on their hands.
Well, think about it, Diesel. You're a high school kid thinking about where you want to go to school. You want to go to a place that's dead? You want to go to a place that's hopping, right? Think about that. Think about how it looks to recruits. National TV.
Yeah.
You know, you got a bunch of gray tops in the stands, or you got a bunch of people losing their ever-loving minds. It's a conundrum because they need the money.
Why is Cameron Indoor Stadium so nuts game in and game out? Because the students are all around the floor.
Yeah.
And no one else in this country has figured out. Give the students the entire lower bowl.
Yep. That's exactly right. I mean, I'd love to see their business model, because it is all students right around there, right? They pay more. There's absolutely positively no doubt about that. All right, my friends, we're coming right back with your way with a little preview nugget on this weekend's divisional series here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. It's Offsides. Mark, Ryan, and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Tremendous to have you guys with us. All right, Diesel. Very quick early lean here, okay? To win and against the spread. Texas at Baltimore. The line is Baltimore -9. Who wins? Who covers?
I think the Texans cover, Ravens win.
I think the Ravens win, and I think the Ravens cover 9 points. I like the Texans a lot. I don't think they're ready for this. Green Bay at San Francisco, Diesel. Exactly the same parameters. San Francisco -9. Who wins? Who covers?
That I could see the 49ers winning and covering. I could see a situation where the Packers kind of shot their shot against Dallas, and they may not have a whole lot left in the tank, especially after a lot of travel. I could see them, having that one exceptional performance in the wild card game against Dallas, and then, just having an epic collapse themselves in the divisional.
Totally agree. 49ers win, 49ers cover. These are 2 double-digit wins on Saturday. Buccaneers at the Lions, Diesel. Lions favored by 6.5 points. Always be wary of a spread like that because they want you to say, oh, Detroit wins by a touchdown, I win. They know that, obviously. They want you to think that. So, Detroit -6.5. Tampa Bay at Detroit. After all, Diesel, they got to play in those 13-degree temperatures up there in Detroit, right?
Well, it's going to be a balmy 65 inside the dome.
Yeah.
Again, reason why I think every stadium needs to have a closable roof for these late season games. You shouldn't get this massive competitive advantage just because you're up north. Let me say that I think the Lions are a team of destiny this year. I think they win and cover.
I think the Lions win, and I think the Lions cover. This one, Diesel, you can sway me. Kansas City at Buffalo. Sunday night, 6:30 p.m. Supposed to be 20 degrees, but that's nothing. That's balmy. I mean, they're going to have their swimsuits on.
Let's get tropical, right?
Yeah. The line is Buffalo -3. Kansas City at Buffalo. Buffalo -3.
I think Buffalo wins. I think Buffalo wins and covers. It feels wrong to just say the home team is going to win and cover every time. But I think that environment in Buffalo is such that the Bills Mafia is going to be insane. Hide your tables all over upstate New York because they're busting through.
It's not wrong, Diesel, and here's why. The winning percentage of home teams in the wild card round is 48%. The winning percentage of teams in the divisional round is 76%. The odds are 3 out of 4 home teams will win. You and I have picked 4 out of 4 home teams. And we only disagreed. You say Houston covers the spread and loses. I think Houston loses and doesn't cover the spread. I'm taking Buffalo at home. Their current form, hot streak. They win and cover. There you go. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joins us next right here on Offsides. We are the Fan Upstate. So South Carolina wore the L at home to a very average basketball coach yesterday. Mike White, Georgia. Why do I know that? Used to be the coach of my alma mater, the University of Florida Gators. And Mike White did this little shiesty maneuver where right before he was about to get fired, you almost never see this in sports. Florida was about to fire him. Okay? This could happen this year, Diesel. Very unlikely. But imagine for a minute that like Brad Brownell in a blink takes the coaching job at Pitt right before he's about to get fired at Clemson. Okay, a lesser ACC school just hired him. That's what Georgia did with Mike White. They're not awful. They're not great. And they went to South Carolina. The Gamecocks, I wanted to say, were 6.5 point favorites last night, and the Bulldogs got the dub. It was not without controversy. There was a flagrant called on South Carolina, an undercutting of a drive. And let me tell you, folks, they always call that as a flagrant foul. You know, I'm not saying the player had malicious intent, but if a player is airborne and your defender undercuts him when he's in the air, that is always a flagrant foul. Always. You know, it's about the decision. It's not about the result. You could say, well, Mark, dude didn't even get hurt. Not about that. It's about the decision. It's not about the result. Let's get to it. And Chris Phillips joins us right now on the line. Will you stop running into Diesel in downtown Greenville? Chris, will you stop doing that? How you doing, man?
Small world, man. That was great to see Diesel out and about. So it was, yeah, that was really cool. But I appreciate you having me on, man. And yeah, we're in full swing with SEC basketball season. Obviously, you mentioned the flagrant that was called, Mark, and that was I've heard a lot today from Gamecock fans that the referees are why South Carolina lost. But I look at it, Mark.
Come on.
Well, to get to that, there's things I believe that you can control, and there's things you can't control, and you can't necessarily control what a referee does or does not call, especially in basketball, where a foul is. You kind of make up your mind what is a foul and what's not, right? But when you miss 15 free throws and you lose a game by 5 points, Mark, I mean, that's fully in your control. So it was a huge missed opportunity for South Carolina last night, a game that, you felt like if they were going to keep up the momentum of talking about NCAA tournament appearance or what have you, I'm not saying they can't do it. Like it's 100% they can't do it, but that loss last night really hurt on the resume.
Keeping it on the hardwood here, Chris, what can you tell us about the fallout from the Nate Oates at Alabama situation where he pushed a Missouri player out of the way? Is there any fallback from that, or is it just it is what it is?
So he effectively, that's a great question, Diesel. He effectively got a slap on the wrist from the SEC, a public reprimand, I believe it's called, which, again, I think is just that. It's just literally a slap on the wrist. They send him a letter saying, hey, you shouldn't have done that, and that's about all she wrote. I thought you realistically could have given him a game or two. I mean, you watch the video, and it's like you understand where Nate Oates is coming from, I'm sure, and it's I think today kind of showed that, fandom overrules logic in a lot of these scenarios, right, where it's like Alabama fans are saying, that's the kind of coach you want to have. He's protecting the team. He's protecting the guys. And everybody on the outside looking in is like, yeah, you can't put your hands on a player, right? And every fan base, almost near all the diehards, at least the fanaticals, would go with that same sentiment as well, like Bama fans are doing. But you just can't touch an opposing player, man. You just can't put your hands on an opposing player. So I thought suspending him for a game or two would have been the move. But, the SEC with nothing more than, I guess, a stern tongue lashing was sufficient for Nate Oates. So not a great look, especially for a guy whose program last year went through so much turmoil off the court, right, with some legal stuff. And then this happens. And, I got nothing against Nate Oates, but you can tell, you can understand how he's somewhat of an unlikable guy. Great basketball coach, but always seems to find himself in the middle of stuff like this. So no harm, no foul is what the SEC has to say about it.
Chris, we were complimenting Colonial Life Arena for what they do, allowing fans to kind of stream in and fill in empty seats in the lower bowl. What would be your solution for that conundrum, that it's the gray tops who can afford the expensive seats, but it's not the gray tops that make it a raucous home court atmosphere? It's not the gray tops that make it look great on TV. Then you got the Gray Tops who are upset because, man, I paid $200 for this ticket, and you just let a student come down here that paid 10. How do you get around that?
Well, Mark, first thing, I think it's great that Colonial Life Arena, I think others are doing that as well, where it's at a certain point in the game, they're allowing students or fans to come down and fill the lower bowl. And I mean, here's the thing, Mark, when you have an arena like Colonial Life Arena, it's a beautiful arena, right? It's great for many reasons. Concert venue, basketball games, obviously, but when you have a venue that seats 18,000 people, like I don't care how good the product is, it's going to be really, really difficult to fill that size of an arena for college basketball. I mean, it just is, right? In the SEC especially. So, and if you've ever seen the way the student section is set up at the CLA, it's a disgrace, really, truly. I mean, they're putting half the student section up in the upper deck or the upper part of the arena. I mean, I think you lean more towards you want that raucous environment. You want that great environment, especially with a young coach like Lamont Paris who's trying to build something. And, you know, you want to have the most hostile home environment you possibly can. I think the Gray Tops can just get over it, Mark. There's really no other way to put it. I mean, if you're not going to show up to the game and there's going to be empty seats, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous to have people sitting up in the rafters when half of the lower bowl is empty. And I'm not saying that was the case last night, but certainly there have been games like that. So I think it's a great thing South Carolina's doing. I know some other venues and arenas are doing that as well. But I mean, again, you want to get behind a young coach. You want to get behind a young coach in year 2 of his tenure. I encourage it. I mean, I certainly don't have any problem with it. Rather than the fact, I encourage it. And I think South Carolina is doing a great thing by trying to make the CLA as intimidating an atmosphere as possible. And they got to restructure the student section too, man. Having the students up top just does nothing. I don't know why South Carolina hasn't been able to figure that out, but I hope they continue to do it truly, because it looks much better on TV. It's much louder and creates a better home atmosphere for the Gamecocks.
Chris, do you believe that the SEC has surpassed the ACC as a better basketball conference?
It sounds crazy, Diesel, but I think you really could. I think you really could argue that. The depth of the league is what stands out, right? I mean, Vandy's terrible. They're at the bottom. Outside of that, everybody is a tough out. And I mean, I think you could really look at the top of the league too, and what Tennessee is doing, what Auburn is doing. Kentucky is Kentucky. I think Alabama is starting to come along. We'll see kind of who that 5 and number 6 team is, or who those teams are, if you will. But I mean, the sheer depth of the league is one of the things that really, really makes it stand out. I mean, you saw South Carolina and Georgia last night, right? And I just think what you're seeing, and that's what stood out to me, Diesel, early on, is the depth of the league. Like tonight, we've got LSU, Ole Miss. LSU's a 3.5-point favorite in that game. And I mean, they're early on in the Matt McMahon tenure, and Ole Miss is a top 25 team, and they go on the road and they're an underdog. So I think it just goes to show, man, it's true in football. It's certainly true in baseball and in basketball as well. Now, you know, this conference has come so far over the last decade where truly anybody can beat anybody on any given night. That's what we're seeing. And so I think, you know, based off of that, I think you certainly could argue that the SEC has taken over as superior to the ACC when it comes to basketball conferences. But that does feel strange to say, right? Because forever we grew up with the ACC is, you know, the best basketball conference in the country. So I think it's a fun conversation, but the SEC has come so far over the last decade plus or so.
Chris, what would you do with Brad Brown, LLL? There's more L's coming there. But what would you do with him? 3 births in 13 years. You're aware of the now viral conversation I had on the sideline with Graham Neff last year, that he said I had full license to share with the Clemson fans, that if Clemson did not make the tournament this year, they would be making a change. What is it? Like, there's some Dallas Cowboys in that guy. You know, where it's like it gets to an important moment and like the airway just gets tight, man. Like what do you do there? I mean, it's they were so good, so dominant until we got to ACC play. Now they're scuffling around, losing to non-top 25 teams. Have you seen enough to pull the trigger on Brownell?
Yeah, Mark, it's one of those things. Tale as old as time, right? We're having this conversation again. I feel like I've heard you do this segment multiple times over the last couple of years, right? We get to a certain point especially too, it seems Clemson follows this path of they start out really hot, and maybe they start hot in conference play, and then it's like reality sets in, right? Like you mentioned, a little bit of Dallas Cowboys and Brad Brownell. I guess Clemson fans, you just have to ask yourself, are you tired of having the same conversation over and over and over again, right? And at some point, it becomes very obvious what you need to do. Like, what are the expectations for your basketball program? You know what I mean?
We've asked, Chris. Let me interject here.
Right.
We've asked, and it's the same for Clemson and South Carolina. Make the tournament more years than you don't. Okay.
Right.
For Brad Brownell to achieve that, okay, he would have to make the tournament 7 years in a row, starting now. Well, Clemson fans didn't like when I said that during the hot start, and they said, no. The clock starts now, or the clock starts when we, gave Little John the facelift. And regardless, you see the goalposts are moving. You know, when they're winning, they move the goalposts. No. The reality is, make the tournament more years than you miss it. He's got to make it 7 years in a row for that to be the case. I think the first strike that he gets, he'd be out for me in that 7-year stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just spinning your wheels at this point, right? If you're Clemson, you sort of know what you're going to get. So I'd be in favor. Listen, they missed the tournament this year. I think making a change, and to your point, you've had the conversation with Clemson's leadership that the change will be coming, and I think it'll be a good change. I really do. I know basketball in the Palmetto State is not held in as high regard as even baseball, right? In regards to expectations, in regards to maybe even fan support. But really, if you think about it, Mark, there's no reason why these schools in the Palmetto State cannot be successful basketball programs, why they can't, for example, make the tournament more often than they miss it, can't make the tournament 6 out of 10 times in a decade. And the first thing that has to change is the expectations from the fans and from the administration of those two schools. And so, I think it was you that said it. I've heard it from others before. You get what you allow, right? You become what you allow. And I mean, if you continue to let Brad Brownell just slide and come back, and you're going to keep getting the same thing. So if I was a Clemson fan, certainly I think I'd be ready to pull the trigger on Brownell, assuming they don't make the tournament this year. And you know what? Maybe you take a step back for a couple of years, but at least you're trying something different, right? Just ask South Carolina, right? You get rid of Frank Martin. Year one under Lamont Paris was abysmal. I mean, look what's happened this year, though, right? Sometimes change can be a good thing.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joining us on the show. Chris, I'm going to ask you sort of an all-encompassing meta SEC football question here. What teams in the SEC got what they needed this offseason to really take a big step forward in 2024? Not a little piece here, not an extra 20 yards on offense there, but like who got what they really needed to take a step forward?
Well, Diesel, I'll start with the Georgia Bulldogs because Nick Saban hung it up. I mean, that was the last thing. I mean, that was kind of the last thing standing in their way, the last real thorn in their side. So, I mean, listen, I think if you're a Georgia fan right now, you're living in a fantasy land. You're living in a dream world, right, where Nick Saban is no longer coaching Alabama. We're seeing the mass exodus in Tuscaloosa. And so if I'm a Dogs fan, I mean, I'm giddy, man. I just, you look at what were they 1-5 against Saban, right? So the thing that was sort of standing in their way from really taking that next step in regards to being a quote unquote dynasty, if you will, is now gone. So I think Georgia, let's call it what it is. They're one of the biggest winners from Nick Saban's retirement. I know we've talked about it before, guys, but I think Ole Miss. I mean, I talked to Brad Logan, an Ole Miss insider. I believe he's with 24 or on 3 Sports actually. Either way, though, talked to the Ole Miss insider, and he told me that from the portal pickups they've gotten, he is expecting Ole Miss in this 2024 season for when they take the field for it to be the greatest assemblance of defensive talent to ever take the field in Oxford. Like, that's how good they're expecting to be under defensive coordinator Pete Golding. And so, I mean, I think Ole Miss significantly took a step forward what they brought in the portal. Outside of that, if you're asking for major leaps and major jumps, Diesel, I don't know that, I think I think Missouri got better. I mean, I think Kentucky got better. But I would say those would be my top 2, man. I think Texas too. I think Texas, they've been big winners of the portal. We got to start thinking about Texas as SEC. So they just picked up Isaiah Bond from Alabama. It seems like every other day they're getting some big commitment out of the transfer portal. So getting Quinn Ewers back, by the way, for the next season, that was massive, right? Sometimes the biggest recruiting wins are the guys who are already on your campus that decide to come back. Georgia's felt that with Carson Beck announcing he's coming back. A lot of that team is coming back. They may land Caleb Downs from Alabama out of the transfer portal. It sounds like the Dogs are the favorite to get him. So those would be my top three. I would say Texas, Georgia, and Ole Miss. And by the way, guys, all three of those benefit from Nick Saban hanging it up. But certainly Georgia, I think, is Kirby Smart and company look to take that next step and become sort of that next dynasty, if you will.
Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, joining us here on Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel. We are the Fan Upstate. Chris, what is your 3-year forecast for Clemson football? Is Dabo going to be there for the duration, or is he not? Is Clemson going to be in the ACC, or are they not? Results on the field. 3-year forecast, Chris Phillips.
I don't think Clemson's going to be in the ACC. I'd be surprised at that. I think with the ever-changing landscape of college football, I don't know if Clemson's going to go to the Big Ten or, I mean, heck, 3 years from now, Mark, you know how things are moving so quickly. We could have, you know, one big super conference and the Power Five is completely separated from G5. And I mean, you know, those are things that folks who are a lot smarter than me are in control and in power, and they're making those decisions. But I mean, you have to look at what happened with Florida State this past year. And I mean, those schools have got to be figuring out ways out immediately, like trying to go through every loophole they can figure out. Because Clemson doesn't want that to happen to them, right? So I don't think Clemson will be in the ACC. You know, if it's 3 years, if it's 5 years, whatever it is, I think that change is coming sooner rather than later. Great question, Mark. Is Dabo Swinney there? I mean, it's, you know, I'm just still fascinated and amazed by the fact that Dabo Swinney refuses to utilize the transfer portal. I mean, I guess the most they did this past cycle was they offered a couple of guys, but the only school in the top 25 in recruiting that did not sign anyone from the portal was Clemson at number 15. And I mean, I think their ratings are suffering from it. Like, they're not recruiting at the level they once were. They're not recruiting a top 5 clip or even a top 10 clip. So, you know, I think winning trumps all, right? I think no matter what you've done at a certain school, even if you won national championships, nobody's immune from the effects of losing. And I mean, you know, 3-year projection record wise, Mark, I don't think Clemson's just going to fall off the cliff, right? I mean, I think, and I mean this respectfully, but it's just the truth. Like, they play in the ACC, so I don't know they're ever going to have a schedule that's good enough to beat them up and pick on them and them go 6-6. But I mean, if Clemson strings another 8-4, 2 or 3 more years of that, there's going to be his seat's going to be on fire, Mark, because forever and ever and ever, I think Clemson fans, what they're going to go back to is, Dabo, you said it yourself, best is the standard. Best is the standard. Are you doing everything in your power to make Clemson the best? And I think we can all agree he's obviously not. So is Dabo Swinney the head coach of Clemson in 3 years? If I had to bet, it'd probably be 51-49. I would probably lean no, though. I'd probably lean no, because the ever-changing landscape of college football, I don't see Dabo Swinney evolving with the times. And if you can't evolve, you can't win, right? You adapt or die. So it will not surprise me at all if in 3 years Dabo Swinney has either retired or taken another job or is just simply not at Clemson anymore.
You know, Chris, and Clemson fans will say, look, he is using the portal, but if you're not using the portal effectively, you're effectively not using the portal, right? So, I mean, that's the reality of the situation, that they're not competitive in the portal. Anything worth doing is worth doing well. Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered. Great stuff as always, man. Congrats on the new venture.
Mark, Diesel, I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. We'll do it again next week.
All right, looking forward to it. And we've got the top 5 at 5 coming your way next here on Offsides, the Fan Upstate. Interactive sports talk show anywhere. It's Offsides. Mark Ryan and Diesel, and we are the Fan Upstate, rolling on for another 28 minutes today. That's it. Why? because we've got Furman basketball, VMI, 2 straight SoCon Conference wins today over the last 2 games for Furman. We will be in Asheville for the SoCon Conference Championship again this year. We look forward to that and thrilled to have you guys with us, as is always the case. We have had a jam-packed couple of hours of the show today, and of course, we want you to take part. But reminder, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Did you know you can find Offsides on either one? That's right, my friends. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, we're right there. When you're there, download a couple of your favorite clips. People always say, Mark, I missed this. Can you talk about this again? And the answer is always, guys, it's right there. It's right there for you. Everything you want is on demand. Not to mention on the Odyssey app, AUDACY. It's time for us to do that jam. We call it the Top 5 at 5. The top 5 biggest sports stories of the day, the top 5 topics we're discussing. Ladies and gentlemen of the Upstates, Offsiders, the top 5 at 5 starts right now.
And now, the top 5 at 5.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hit it.
5.
At number 5, always like to give you something you can't get anywhere else. How about my proprietary formula, 8 criteria to win the Super Bowl? Who's left standing when we apply them? 13%. Your quarterback's got to be making under 13% of your salary cap to win it all. All but one time in NFL history has that proven to be true. The exception was last year when Patrick Mahomes did it, but it's only happened once, has a 96% success rate. Who does that eliminate this year among playoff teams? Detroit and Kansas City. You need to be 6-3 or better through 9 games. If you look at the track record of Super Bowl champions, they don't just get hot late. I'm not going to say it's never happened. The Giants did it when they beat the Patriots as a 9-7 team. But most often, you got to be consistently really good all year long. So if you have a record of 6-3 or better through 9 games, that means you were. Who does that eliminate? Who was not 6-3 through 9 games? Buffalo, the Los Angeles Rams, already gonzo, Green Bay, and Houston. 3 of those 4 teams are still alive. This is a Mark Ryan special. My own statistics. 29 of the last 31 years. The team that won the Super Bowl had one of the following 2 things. The number 1 overall defense, that was Cleveland this year, or a top 10 statistical quarterback the year they won it. That eliminates Pittsburgh and Tampa Bay. No number 1 defense, no top 10 quarterback. Then we look at betting and the spread. Super Bowl champions typically win 3 games in a row against the spread at one point during the season. They also win at least 9 games against the spread overall. That eliminates Philadelphia. Good news is Tampa Bay already did that for us, right? Criteria number 6. The last 8 Super Bowl champions all won at least 6 of their games by double digits. By double digits. All right. And it's fascinating to consider, and it's fascinating to look at that. It has been tried and true and successful through the test of time. It really has been. So when you go through this and you look at it, player for player, buck for buck, here's what you've got. The Chiefs, last year Super Bowl champion, 7 double-digit wins. Year before that, Rams won it all, 6. Year before that, Bucks, 8. Year before that, Chiefs, 7. Year before that, Patriots, 8. 2017, the Eagles had 7 double-digit wins, and in 2016, the Patriots had 10. Who does that eliminate? Also, Philadelphia, right? You got to have a +6 or better turnover margin. Turnovers you cause versus turnovers you offer your opponents. +6 on the turnover margin. Who does that eliminate? Cleveland and Miami. Miami was +2. Cleveland was -9. You saw that on display, the pick sixes last week at Houston. Eliminated already. And then finally, criteria number 8. 6 of the last 7 Super Bowl champions have had a point differential. Their season points scored versus their season points allowed. Their point differential has been at least +100. Are there any teams that meet all 8 criteria? I'm so glad you asked. The answer is resoundingly yes. The 3 teams are Baltimore, San Francisco, and Dallas. Now you're laughing at Dallas, right? I'm laughing at Dallas. One thing numbers can't measure is how you perform under pressure. There's no stat for choking, right? That's why we say stats are like bikinis. They show some things, but not all. But Dallas is gone. The 2 teams that remain, Baltimore, San Francisco. Folks, those are the teams that pass all 8 criteria. Your Super Bowl champion is going to be Baltimore or San Francisco. If I gave you right now Baltimore, San Francisco, or the field, what are you taking? Who are you taking? Let us know. Next up.
4.
You know, I believe last night I was looking at my Twitter feed and Clemson fans have reached a breaking point with Brad Brownell. More losses coming. They lost to Georgia Tech last night. Yet another loss to an unranked team. This is Clemson's 4th loss in the last 5 games. They are now 2-4 in the ACC. And Clemson fans are hitting me over the head with some version of, Mark, you haven't been here long enough to know. I've been here 5 years. You haven't been here long enough to know this is just what we do. This is what we do every single bloody year, right? So have you had enough? Is this now the breaking point for one Brad Brownell? I think it most definitely is. You guys have told me your expectation is to make the tournament more years than not. Brad Brownell is 3 tournament berths in 13 years. He'd have to make it 7 times in a row to meet that criteria. And I've had quite a few people bring up to me today my conversation with Graham Neff in April at the Clemson Orange and White game. Folks, that very much happened. That very much took place. And I'm incredibly appreciative of Graham Neff for sharing that with me. Okay? To reset that, and I took him at his word then, and I absolutely take him at his word now. He said, I appreciate you being here. I want you to know we hear you, and we hear your audience on Brad. He just called him Brad. And he went on to recite the different points that Diesel and I had made. He goes, 3 tournament berths in 13 years, make the tournament more years than not, right? He said to me, the loss that we had to Morehead State in the NIT, which stands for the not in tournament, was unacceptable. It popped the balloon of our positive energy. And then he said this, if we aren't in the tourney next season, there will be a change. Okay, so now what is Brad Brownell doing? He's making it even harder on himself. You know, like I don't know if a tournament berth is going to be enough to save him anymore. Might have to be Sweet 16 because he's jerking your chain yet again. You know, one of the my mom has taught me a lot of powerful quotes. One of my favorite is when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Believe them. Okay? We owe it to Brad Brownell to trust that what he has shown himself to be is what he is. And what is that? That is a very nice guy, a family man, Clemson through and through, loyal. That'll get you a lot of years at your place of business. But he's not a consistently high-performing basketball coach. That's okay. It is what it is. You know, he and Beamer both are underwhelming and underachieving, and they're pulling on your heartstrings because you like them. And the fact that you like them makes them stick around a lot longer. I've had program directors who keep around people for years that don't perform. And I've asked some of them, why are you doing this? Why do you keep people around who don't perform? Doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, because they're well liked around here, and they do a lot of stuff for us, and they really help out the organization. But is he producing? Are they producing or are they not? Right? Like what are we doing? Right? I've had those conversations with program directors earlier parts of my career. Doesn't make sense. You don't keep Brad Brownell around because you like him. It's a business decision. Either you're meeting the standard or you're not. You know, if best is the standard for Clemson football, I guess below average is the standard for Clemson basketball. Show me it isn't. Show me I'm wrong. Next up.
3.
Coach Prime was asked any desire to coach in the NFL, coach all those millionaires. Here is what Prime had to say.
Jackson, now Boulder, NFL one day. Is that in your future?
That's not my cards.
No.
That would be tough for me to fathom. Grown men making millions of dollars that don't want to play. You know how we felt about some guys didn't want to play baseball. Like, you want to take the day off. Why? You get compensated to play baseball. Why you need a day off?
I can never get over that with teammates. Like, you got to be in there every day.
All the time. And you was known as that gritty dude that just loved to play the game, man. And I appreciated that about you.
By the way, that's courtesy of the Brett Boone podcast.
Oh, Brett Boone. There you go. I've spoken to Brett. Diesel, you made an astute point. You said?
Yeah, he doesn't want to coach millionaires who don't want to play, so he's going to stay in college and coach 100,000-aires who don't want to play.
In bowl games.
Yeah.
And we're going to see guys opt out in November when their team is out of contention. And we're going to see guys opt out of the college football playoff. Believe you me, that's going to start. And there's going to be enough idiots on social media who defend them. Next up.
2.
We took a little analysis look. We put under a fine-tooth comb the 4-team college football playoff era today. Where did you have to be in the 4-team college football playoff era to win it all in the preseason poll? Okay, very interesting. In the preseason poll, where were the national champions? 10-year study that I did. Okay, you ready for the results? To win the national champion, those teams had an average ranking of 3 in the preseason poll. The highest was 1, the lowest was 5. Interestingly, only one team was preseason number 1 that won the national championship over the last 10 years. But the average was right there, number 3. How about just to make the national championship game? The average to make the national championship game was 9.6, but that includes TCU, who was unranked. Remove TCU, the average team in the preseason poll that made the national championship game was about number 6. Here's a little stumper for you. Okay, I shared it earlier in the show. I'm not going to share it again now. We'll see if you can get it right on the text line. 71307. Just start your text with the word fan and away you go. TCU was not the only unranked team in the preseason to make it to the national championship game over the last 10 seasons. Who was the other? Who was the other? I want to know what you're thinking. Tell me what's on your mind. And finally.
1.
Oh, gosh, I can't believe we have to hear this again, Diesel. This is so painful. So painful. Todd Bowles, the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, is asked, why am I going to share the question? Okay. All I'm going to say is, guys, what should the fallout of this be? You know, Diesel and I went through the most awkward moments we had. Diesel asked a musician a question, and the musician hit him with, "That's what you're going to ask me?" And he did that to Diesel on the air. Okay. I, one time, dated somebody right after another relationship ended. And amidst a group of friends, I called the new girl the ex-girlfriend's name. Ay caramba. I also helped to launch the Odyssey sports station in Atlanta. And on like my second or third show there, I had the gnarliest stomach virus, and I'm on the air with it. And those are the most awkward moments of my life. Okay? Listen to this poor lady's terribly painful, awkward moments with Buccaneers head coach Todd Bowles. And I hope you realize what she did wrong as soon as it happens.
Coach, looking forward towards Detroit. The weather has been a factor in some of the playoff games, even for the most prepared teams. Today, it's 13 in Detroit, which doesn't compare to some of the temperatures we tend to talk to. Any special plans to acclimate the team to not only endure, but perform in those kind of frigid temperatures should you face them in Detroit?
You do know we play indoors, right? They got a dome. No, nothing planned. We're indoors, and we only have to be outside for 20 seconds getting off the bus going under the thing, so we'll be okay.
I mean, you could tell there was a moment there where he really thought about just dropping the hammer and eviscerating her.
Yeah.
But he thought better of it, and he goes, nope, nothing special. We're only going to be outside for 20 seconds.
Credit to him for not doing that, Diesel. Like, credit to him, because let's be honest, like, we may not have had that moment, but we all have moments, right? We all have moments where the brain just doesn't fire correctly. Unfortunately, Diesel, I don't think that was one of those situations. I think she really didn't know.
Well, my guess is maybe she had a couple of questions in mind, prepared, and she was number 5, 6, 7 asking the question, and so her question might have already been answered. And her program director may say, hey, I got to get you to ask a question so that you can be on tape asking the coach this question. And then she's like, gosh, she's just got to say something, ask a question off the cuff. And that's what came out of her head, was how are you going to deal with the weather in these, in these situations? Look, I've done interviews before where it's like a cattle call with all these artists who are just swirling around, and they sit somebody down in front of you, and you don't know who they're going to put in front of you, so you can't prepare any questions, any specific questions for anybody. And so then you're just sitting there staring at each other like, well, what do I ask? I don't even know who you are. I don't even know the name of your band. I don't know what to ask you. So, like, maybe benefit of the doubt, maybe that's sort of her situation.
Yeah, there wasn't even a fallback, Diesel. There wasn't even an exit strategy. She couldn't even say, yeah, that's what I meant. The 20 seconds that you guys are going to be off the, getting off the bus and going in. There was no fallback.
I thought her out could have been when she said the temperatures that you're going to have to endure. She could have said the temperatures indoors. That could have been her out.
Yeah.
She could have been, no, I meant indoors. Like, how are you going to deal with playing indoors? I don't know.
Something like that.
I'm just trying to think of a way she could CYA.
Up next, Brad Brownell will not see April as Clemson's coach. A number 1 seed will go down on Saturday. But 2 of 4 truth serum sweet nothings that we will have for you next here on Offsides, the Fan Upstate.
Hey, JD, Madcraft, even Tim. Where was Tim from? I forgot. Tim said where he was messaging in from the show. Wherever you were from. Sorry, man. It's hard to scroll back. Tim and Gaffney. All of you guys who are here throughout the show today, thank you so much. Thank you so much. And we'll be back what day?
Tomorrow.
You're going to be on the stream tomorrow? All right.
We'll see you then, guys. Take care.